She sent a chainsaw to my house. It was, she had ordered it on Amazon and had it shipped to my house. And you know, when you get an Amazon package, they're really ambiguous. You just like, oh, I ordered something, or I tear into it and I'm like, a chainsaw? And I remember like I said, at this point, I stopped reading all her texts and emails because there were millions of them and I didn't have enough time in the day and I would have panic attacks. So I just stopped reading them. Just by pure luck, I had read one of them after I received that, and she said, "Oh, by the way, did you get the tools that I sent you?" I was like, "Oh my God, she just called a chainsaw a tool?"
She grabbed me by the arm. She was screaming at me, asking me like, "Why won't you be my friend? Why won't you like help me get with Keith?" And blah blah blah. And like, I was like, "No, I don't want anything to do with you. Please go away. Please don't touch me." And yeah, she threw a glass of champagne in my face, and she was completely unhinged. This was in front of a huge crowd of people.
I'm Jamie Beebe.
And I'm Jake DEPTULA. On today's episode of Strictly Stalking, we're chatting with Keith and Maisie, two friends who work together at a Hollywood nightclub.
While Keith was DJing, he met a clubgoer who would show up every week and try to hang out with Maisie and the rest of the nightclub staff.
At first, Keith thought she was just a fan, but her initial friendly behavior turned aggressively romantic and then escalated into a delusional and dangerous path of abuse.
Keith and Maisie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Keith, when did you start working at the club?
I've been doing clubs. I'm now 40. I've been doing this since I was 20. I did a club called Moscow. I'd been doing that every Wednesday for about 14 years. This was at the tail end of this club. I met her there. She would basically just kind of hang out at the door. At the time, just seemed like a normal fan, just very interested in what we did. And the door staff that I had at the time, this wasn't Maisie, this was other people. They seemed to get along and were becoming friends, so I didn't really think anything of it. About that time, I was starting a new event at a new club. We started doing a Thursday night promotion that was like a lot of 90s and 2000s music. That was kind of when she began coming around nonstop. And every night we had something, she was there. She kind of started taking more of the energy of, at the time she had said she was a promoter, and worked at various other places and loved what I did and wanted to get involved. There was not really any job for her, but anytime someone's that enthusiastic, I like kind of, encouraging that behavior and trying to include them as much as I can. And at the time it seemed like she was becoming friends with everyone, and at the time at least it seemed normal.
What were your first thoughts when you met her? What kind of person was she?
She was very intense. I kind of initially interpreted it as passionate, which I liked. She definitely, a lot of the clubs I do are more alternative. Tends to be for more the Hollywood types, the goth kids, the rock and roll kids, kind of the kids that are a little bit more alternative. I guess you could say alternative based. I do a lot of stuff in like downtown, Silver Lake, Hollywood. Even if I'm doing something that's more top 40, my clientele is pretty diverse. She seemed intense, but also kind of an introvert at the same time. Heavy eyeliner.
She definitely looked the part, yeah.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, how else would you describe her?
I mean, you and I had completely different.
Yeah, I guess you kind of met her later in the game.
First meetings with her, because I met her later than you. When I first met her, she was just cold with me from the start.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why. I was like, I don't know you. I just met you, but
yeah,
okay.
I guess you kind of met her. I mean, as you met her months after, which obviously was a very different person. But yeah, no, she like I said initially, she was Visually, she was kind of more artsy, which obviously I get along with. Those are my people. Um, but at the same time, like I said, she seemed very introverted in many ways. But then when we would talk about nightlife and music, she was very passionate about that. And she was bringing, at the time, she would bring new people every week, and I remember at one point saying to one of the other girls that works for me and promotes with me, being like, this girl doesn't even work for us, and she's in many ways doing our job. I mean, it was great. And I think that got me excited because she had said she wanted to work more with me, but was kind of showing me, from that perspective, I said, wow, this person's really cool and popular and knows a diverse group of people that seem to enjoy what we do. And there were a lot of people I met through her that, were contacts in other ways. And I'd met a couple creatives through her. One gentleman in particular did clubs all around. He did these like vampire balls, and he did these all around the United States. So it's kind of cool. So at that time, at least at that time for me, it was a plus.
And the people she was bringing, they gave you no indication that things could turn.
No, and I think when kind of you meet a number of people and no one mentions anything. Obviously, later I realized these people knew her on a very surface level, but because they came in such quantity, I just kind of took their presence as, well, there's nothing weird here.
When did things shift from friendly to obsessive?
It was, I want to say, October of 2017. So later that year, when I had started that new promotion, that's when she started to become more intense. Maisie had a lot to do with me seeing her shift. Maisie had started working my door at that time. Maisie and I had been friends forever. I met Maisie through my sister, and she had done modeling for my clothing store, and we'd known each other at that point, Maisie, for years.
Yeah, like you and your sister were amongst the first friends I had when I first moved here in 2015. And then I would say it was, around 2017, I started working for you at the door.
And I would say Maisie was the turning point in many ways. I don't know if Maisie was specifically, but it was the presence of other women around me, um, and especially women that were around me and fond of me that she couldn't figure out. At the time, she didn't know my relationship with Maisie. And that's kind of where I saw another side of her in an intensity. But it's kind of like when I saw it, it never went away. It's like once I saw that, um, how could I describe her energy with you? It was very defensive and kind of
It was pretty
frantic.
vicious. Yeah, it was. It was aggressive, and it's like she saw me as competition or something. But I'm like, we're not competing for anything. I don't know you. Like, I don't know what you think is going on, but leave me out of it. And yeah, she had this delusional story in her mind.
The first specific night I remember where I was like, oh, this isn't good. Maisie, myself, all my other staff, a lot of times we'd go out to eat like a late night dinner after the clubs. That was kind of our tradition, still is to this day. It's kind of nice to just kind of unwind after all that intense energy and just kind of just like let yourself relax, but be among friends. This particular time, we'd gone to Kitchen 24 one night. A bunch of us, when we were leaving, she was kind of standing outside, just kind of listening to our conversation. And at this time, like I said, we didn't know the intensity or there were any issues there. And myself and a couple other people had invited her along. And I just remember looking at her at dinner that night, and she was just kind of soaking everything in like a sponge. And I also remember kind of there's a point where you can kind of tell someone looks at you in a different way. I think I was probably on one of my generic passionate rants about music or film or something, and I just kind of remember her. It kind of that feeling where someone's just looking at you without blinking. And I remember seeing her, and she wasn't speaking. She was just she was just listening and soaking it in. And then there was another point where I think it was either you or one of the other girls at the table chimed in, and that's when she did begin to talk, and her kind of tone and range was a little bit, like I said, back to that intensity, and it was a little bit defensive. And that's when I kind of remember I was like, oh, this isn't her wanting to work for me. I think this might be her liking me a little bit more on a personal level, and then now realizing, oh, she's not responding well to the women around me. And like I said, at this table, 3/4 of the people that work for me are women and also friends. So that's kind of when I realized, I was like, oh no, this might be a thing, and this might be a thing I don't want in my life.
Jake, what are 2 things I love doing?
Hiking with your dog and drinking with your friends.
Yes, you know me so well. That's why getting the new DrinkWorks machine is a game changer for me. It works like a fancy automatic espresso machine. You press a button and the machine does the rest. Only it's not coffee, it's cocktails.
It sure is. The quality of the drinks are undeniable. Every drink includes only premium spirits and mixers. I've splurged on $20 cocktails, and they're amazing, but DrinkWorks is just as good for a lot less.
And it's so easy. Just choose your drink, insert the pod, and in less than a minute, you have a perfectly chilled cocktail or mixed drink. No shopping for different types of alcohol, and no messy cleanup.
My favorite is the new Jack Daniel's Lemonade. It combines refreshing lemonade with premium Jack Daniel's whiskey.
I have to say, I'm not normally a big whiskey drinker, but the Jack Daniel's Lemonade definitely blew me away with the great taste.
My standard drink is the go-to margarita, and DrinkWorks makes it to perfection.
The best way for our listeners to get this amazing drink maker is to go to drinkworks.com. That's DRINKWORKS.com.
They've already taken $100 off the price, and now they'll even throw in free shipping.
It's a limited time offer, so don't miss out on this. It's perfect for your summer get-togethers.
That's drinkworks.com. No need to use a code. The best deal is already included.
And remember, please enjoy responsibly. Wouldn't you love if every clothing store you shopped at already understood your loves, hates, and total no-go zones? Well, there's a company focused on making that happen.
Fashion changes. True style doesn't. Even so, your timeless look can use a pick-me-up every once in a while. Get help from someone who gets what you're going for, without ever leaving home, with a Stitch Fix styling expert.
Stitch Fix is a personal styling company that brings you the world of fashion and style. It's a completely different and fun way to find clothes that you will love. And it's all about you every time.
To get started, go to stitchfix.com/stalking to set up your profile, and they'll deliver great looks personalized just for you, in your colors, styles, and budget.
I was so excited to fill out the styling quiz and can't wait to get my fix in just a couple days.
You pay a $20 styling fee for each fix, which is credited towards anything you keep. Schedule at any time. There's no subscription required. Plus, shipping, returns, and exchanges are easy and free.
I like that Stitch Fix does the hard work for you, making great style effortless for everybody, including women, men, and kids.
Get started today at stitchfix.com/stalking, and you'll get 25% off when you keep everything in your fix.
That's stitchfix.com/stalking for 25% off when you keep everything in your fix.
stitchfix.com/stalking.
How did it start to escalate after that night?
She had received my number and email, I think, a week or two prior to that. But it was after that specific night that I started to get what became a regular thing, which was the flood of texts. And it was the texts and the emails where I could really see, one, you know, when you're texting someone else, there's give and take. I ask a question, you give an answer, it's back and forth. And in this case, I remember after that night, I remember waking up to like a shower of texts. And they were kind of all over the place. It was like someone was having a conversation with themselves. Didn't really need me for the conversation, but the conversation was about me. It was about Maisie. It was about some of our other friends. It was about who's good for me, who's bad for me. It was about how she passionately felt about the projects and how other people don't share that vision. Making a lot of speculations about people, how they shouldn't be in my life. And all these things that, you know, someone saying is really kind of just, it's just not relevant, kind of out of line, because they don't know any of these people, and they don't really know me. And that's when you start getting those intense texts where you're like, okay, I gotta kind of distance myself a little bit from that.
Keith, at that point, how much did she know about your life outside of the club?
She didn't really know anything about my life. She had obviously picked up little tidbits at that dinner and other things people had said. I mean, she'd been around for months prior to that, but generally when I'm at work and stuff, there's not a lot of mention. And my work is the main part of my life. DJing and the events I throw, there wasn't a lot of talk about other things. She didn't. It was a lot of speculation and just a lot of intense talk about what's good for me, what's bad for me, and how someone like her should be in my life, and other people, obviously Maisie and present company, weren't good for me. And it just became, like I said, a lot of speculation and intensity where you're like, this is coming out of like left field. Like, you can't even know these things, especially about the people around us.
I think, yeah, her delusions of what she thinks she knows started to come into play with that. And it was becoming like more clear what her intentions were and how unhinged her way of thinking is. I mean, it was just more apparent to me, I guess, because she wasn't pursuing me romantically, but her first initial meeting with me was crazy. But with Keith, I think it took him like a minute to be like, oh, whoa.
I didn't want to believe. I was applying logic to something that wasn't logical, and I was like, this will pass. She'll realize, what she's saying is kind of ridiculous. She doesn't know me that well. But that's also where I started to get weird, because the text messages and the emails, they became more frequent, but they also became sexual in nature. They became aggressive about my friends in nature. And it was at that time they started to escalate to, on a daily level, between emails and text messages and other forms of communication, I would get about 100 points of contact a day. And that's, once it hit that intensity, it was no longer about what a person was saying. To be honest, I didn't even read half of them, because at that point I had checked out and I was like, this is insane. It started out as what seemed like extreme, like kind of high school banter and like kind of chit chat and stuff like that. But then it started to evolve into like just other topics, like talking about witchcraft and understanding how it works and how she could help me through those things. And then just the romance, intense energy of like imagining us together. And then it transformed into us just being together.
At this time, Maisie, was she also contacting you, or was she just talking about you?
When I met her, she was aggressive towards me from the get-go. And I didn't understand why. I didn't know this person at all. I wasn't friends with her. She's just someone that I was acquainted with because she came to the club that I was working at for Keith. And then she would kind of go back and forth between like being kind of like fake friendly toward me, but then also like asking really intrusive questions, like grilling me about like my personal life and like what's my relationship to Keith. And I would just be like, he and I are friends. We've been friends for a while. And she'd be like, but are you guys dating or sleeping together? And I was like, well, no, we're not. But also that's none of your business. Like, and I think it's inappropriate for someone I don't know to be asking me those personal questions. And so she and I got off on the wrong foot from the get-go because of that. And I was just like, I mean, I guess I was pretty blunt with her and telling her to leave me alone. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. And she just couldn't accept that. And she would message me on my social media because it's public. And I would just tell her on there to leave me alone, please. And then I would hear from people that I work with or friends of mine that she's been trying to contact them and basically slander me. And I don't know, messaging them like she knows me or something, and that I'm a whore and this and that, and that I'm trying to steal Keith from her. And I was like, what on earth is she talking about? None of this is going on. I'm not dating Keith. He's a friend of mine, and she's not dating him either. But I was like, why is she dragging me into this? This is insane.
There were also, I would receive text messages that they were more schizophrenic in nature. They would talk about my friends being possessed and how she would see it in their eyes. She would talk about, I would get emails that would include like myself, Donald Trump, and Hitler in the same email. I would get, they were just very scattered. And then that's when they also, the romantic side would also mix with like a violent side. And that's when we kind of started to learn more about her. When she didn't get her way, or she felt like she was being attacked, she would go on these social media rants. But that's when she started to also mention like things became more threatening.
Yeah. And like I blocked her on the messaging on social media and stuff, but she would, I guess there's an app where you can still view people's social media profiles even if they've blocked you. So she would take screenshots of my posts on there and then, or take my photos off from my social media pages, like my Instagram, from this app, and post them on her profile. Like, oh, this person is bullying me and like trying to incite people to attack me from her followers that I don't know. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy.
Yeah.
I would work at the front door. So I was always there when she would show up. And of course, she would immediately begin harassing myself, the security people who were watching the door, just anyone entering or leaving, any friends that I might have there that night. And she would show up and just stand there and just be saying like threatening things, or be demanding to be let in, even though we told her numerous times that Keith doesn't want her in the club anymore. She's blacklisted. And she would just refuse to accept it. And she would try to push her way in. She would try to have other people sneak her in. And she would be standing there calling me a bitch and stuff like that. And I was just like, I'm just doing my job. Yeah, so I was kind of on the front lines for a lot of her harassment, but it was all an effort for her to get in so she could get to Keith. And it just got to be too much. Like every night she was showing up, and like if we told her to back off, she would just go stand across the street and just stand there and stare.
We would have events that were 4 hours long, and she would get there at the beginning and stand at the front until the end. That became a really normal situation. It almost became weird where we were kind of, in a weird way, we were kind of used to it. The reason that I'd blacklisted her, I kind of went back, and it was around August of 2018. That's when I told all my staff, Maisie, security, everything. And that was based on the fact some of the emails became threatening to other people. There was a specific email where she started, and this became frequent, but she had sent me an email where she had talked about poisoning me. There was something about that specific email that just kind of set me off and kind of took my anxiety to a new level.
She would come in and like she would see maybe like a group of friends or girls that Keith was hanging out with, and I would watch this, and she would like cozy up to them and like be like, hey, and offer to buy them shots and stuff. So it's like, who's to say that she wouldn't poison them, like.
And there was a specific girl Maisie and I had talked to, that one of the other places she had worked at, there was an incident where she was accused of poisoning someone.
Yeah.
We weren't sure what kind of charges were brought against, but at some point, this girl had found me and reached out based on friends of friends talking about this stuff, and basically had warned me, like, you have to be really careful. And that was the point where I was like, I can't have her in here. She didn't skip a beat. She just would wait outside every night. And that's when things started to escalate even more, and I realized even blacklisting her wasn't going to be enough. That's when we started talking about getting a restraining order.
Jamie and I recently took an online quiz for Care Of. which is a wellness brand that makes it easy to maintain your health goals with a customized vitamin plan delivered right to you hassle-free.
The vitamin aisle can be confusing, and I never know what to get, but Care of's online quiz was quick and simple with questions like, how much sleep do you get? How often do you work out? And what health goals are most important to you?
Care of is focused on the quality science and research that goes into each of their products. The yummy protein powders are made with wholesome ingredients you can recognize, like organic cocoa and pink Himalayan sea salt.
I used to forget to take vitamins each day, but Care of sends personalized packages with your name on them and includes a quote of the day that I love to post on my Instagram stories. Check it out at FeatherGirl77.
Go to takecareof.com to take your online quiz and get started today.
And for 50% off your first Care of order, enter STALKING50.
That's takecareof.com and enter code STALKING50 for 50% off your first order. Do it today.
When you were going through this, what was your social life like?
I stopped going to dinner with my friends. I became kind of a shut-in. I think it just like energetically, it just knocked me down and wore me out, where even simple everyday tasks became too much, and my anxiety kind of took over, and I definitely became much more of a homebody. The thought of going out, even a normal person, they go to dinner, they want to post a picture on Instagram with their friends. I had to put a lot more thought into that. I had to strategically be like, wait, if I post that, how much longer are we going to be here? How quick can someone be here? How quick can someone be here to hurt us? I'm a little bit of an anxious person to begin with, and this just set me over the top. It got to the point where my social life and my job, unlike most people, are heavily intertwined. Extremely. I'm fortunate enough to, be a DJ, do events, and so I'm fortunate enough to get my job is fun. And I remember at that time, my job became a job, and it really did kind of strip all of the joy out of it. I would have nights that I had. Not only being the event coordinator, but being the DJ, there's so much going on. My anxiety would peak so bad that generally I would have other DJs take over. I wasn't able to do my job to a degree. Not only that, I had no real interest in doing my job because I was so high strung. I almost went from being the DJ to being security detail, not only for my friends, but for myself and my well-being. And I would basically frantically pace those clubs for 4 hours straight, checking the door, checking the back door, checking the emergency exits, making sure we were safe. And especially in a situation like that, safety is really difficult. You're dealing with a club full of people, an art show full of people. And it was really normal of her leading up to these events to send many emails, many text messages being like, whether you want me there or not, I'm coming there. And like I said, this is when like talk of like demonic stuff and witchcraft and her talking about she needs to protect me and other people are trying to kill me. And, receiving an email about someone you believe that is fully capable of hurting you, minutes before you go on stage, minutes before you go to work, talking about there's demons coming to get you, and if I'm not there to protect you, you will die. Receiving those on a daily basis, it just took me over the top. I was really, when you look at it, if I wasn't in charge and I was working for someone else, I really think they would have seen me as really incapable of doing my job. I was fortunate enough to have staff like Maisie and other DJs and stuff that really kicked in gear and took over. But I was a mess, and then it got to the point where being a mess became normal. This went on for so long. I mean, when I look at the timeline of this was 3 years of this, and it's still ongoing. it's luckily to a degree leveled off, but this is something I had to get professional help over. And it got to a point where I would tell my friends, I'd say, think of something that makes you nervous, and then I want you to take that energy and multiply it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And during this time, I was lucky if I would sleep 4 hours straight. My sleep went out the door. And I mean, kind of, one thing I guarantee you guys doing this podcast know about mental health is once your sleep goes, the rest just kind of organically goes with it. And I started to feel crazy myself.
Can you kind of take us through the steps that you went through, step by step, and kind of how it felt, how it made you feel to get that restraining order when you got the authorities involved?
Okay, so it was in November of 2018, we did pull the trigger. We got the restraining orders. I learned a valuable lesson that day. It makes sense, but I think what people have to understand about these situations is it's not illegal to be crazy, and it's not illegal to be annoying. We sat in court. We heard about 20 cases. My case and the girl at the time that I was dating's case, we went with Maisie. All three of us went. We went to get. Maisie was denied. The girl that I was dating, she was given 1 year, and I was given 3 years. I was really the only person that had physical proof, as in text, emails, that had very simple threats. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to poison you. It was an overwhelming process. You have to see a judge. The one thing I state to people, and I tell them this now, is you need proof. You
have to collect evidence. Yeah.
You have to collect evidence. If these people that are stalking you, and what is stalking? A lot of people are like, oh, this person's stalking me. I'm like, well, that person, from the experience in court and everything, I would say that person is heavily annoying you, and that person is uncomfortable. But until they really threaten your life, you have to have really evidence that they are a threat to your well-being. You're not going to get a restraining order. You have to have that evidence. The judge has to see and hear an eyewitness or an email or a text where they threaten you. And I heard, when we sat in court, we heard a million crazy stories, and all of them were denied. I was the only one that had physical proof. When I went to, in the time of this 3-year roller coaster ride, I said it was normal to receive about 100 points of contacts a day. I had a certain point where I had to delete a lot of the emails because my Gmail was full. I kept about 5,000 of them. When I went for proof, I just typed in key search words, death, murder, poison, and then I typed in, creepy enough, I typed in Hitler. That was another person. It was normal for her to mention demons, Hitler, myself, and even Donald Trump in the same conversation.
It's very
or the
schizophrenic, yeah.
Paragraph at a certain point. And I was able to show very simple emails that, like I said, very clean. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to hurt you. There were even emails that to you and I may sound very threatening, but the judge was like, this isn't actually a threat. This may sound threatening, but this isn't actually a threat. If I emailed you and said, I'm so frustrated, I could just kill everyone. To someone stalking you and you being in a point of fear, you're like, oh, that's another threatening email. When the judge reads that, they're like, they're not threatening you. It was really intense, and it was really unusual. It makes sense to me, but you have to kind of look at it from the standpoint of, from the legal standpoint. You have to read it like you're a lawyer. Is this an actual threat? And so I would definitely give people advice, as discouraging as it is do not apply for that restraining order until you have something tangible like that, have solid evidence, because it's just going to be, I don't know, add to your anxiety, add to your heartbreak, add to your frustration when you sit in court for 8 hours and a judge tells you, yeah, there's not sufficient enough evidence here. So definitely get all your ducks in a row. You don't need to have a lot of proof. It's not about, I think a lot of people think it's about quantity. It's really just about the wording and how these people say it. And it's unfortunate because for someone to talk to you like that, or someone to have an eyewitness that sees something like that take place, obviously you're at a point in your life where this person is a real threat, and I don't want that for anyone. But unfortunately, in order to get a restraining order, they're not just handing them out. You have to have substantial evidence. We all went to court together. Maisie was the first one to get up. And so I watched Maisie get denied. And my initial reaction, I remember wanting to throw up in court, being like, the judge just denied her. She's going to deny us next. It's just, and at this point, I had seen everyone get denied. There was not one case that got a restraining order. And Maisie got up there and said all the crazy stuff I was about to say.
When she was threatening me, it wasn't specifically to me. She was just, there was one sentence where she said she would kill me, or that she wanted me dead, or something like that. But they were in emails to Keith specifically.
Yeah.
It was like talking about me And so because it wasn't specifically a threat directed to, it was maybe about me, but not toward me specifically. Like they were just like, sorry, we can't do anything. And I was like, okay, but it says here that she wants to kill me. And they're like, yeah, but she didn't send that email to you.
And then the other thing was, she would go on these rants. And because the rants were so all over the place, she'd say Maisie's name at the top, let's say, but at the bottom, she'd say she wanted to kill her. You know what I mean? There wasn't that direct point of contact.
Yeah.
Because she had mentioned 50 other random things in that email. So it wasn't, I guess, the verbiage wasn't adequate enough, you could say. It didn't say, I want to kill
Legally,
Maisie.
they couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And that was frightening because at this point, she had already shown up to a bar that I was at one night when I was not working and I was just out at this bar with like a couple of my close girlfriends, and she had like attacked me in the crowd physically. She grabbed me by the arm. She was screaming at me, asking me like, why won't you be my friend? Why won't you like help me get with Keith and blah, blah, blah. And like, I was like, no, I don't want anything to do with you. Please go away. Please don't touch me. And, she threw a glass of champagne in my face, and she was completely unhinged. This was in front of a huge crowd of people. And so I'm like, what else could she do? She's going to escalate more. Like, she's violent. She's clearly violent.
What happened after you got the restraining order?
She gave me a 3-year restraining order, and she just kind of went into the information about the restraining order. This person's not we're going to file this. This person will not be able to own a firearm, which when I heard that, for some reason, that I wanted to cry in court, because I was like, okay.
She made a lot of gun-specific threats, yeah.
She can't own a firearm legally. For some reason, that did give me 5 seconds of comfort. And then she granted me a 3-year restraining order. The girl at the time I was dating, she went after me. She almost didn't give her the restraining order. She initially, the judge said that she wasn't going to, and then she mentioned a couple of other things, and then I submitted an email that I had in my pile that mentioned the girl's full name, and that she was going to hurt her. With that one email, she granted her a 1-year restraining order. Things actually got worse. Didn't skip a beat, was at the clubs every night. Other weird things started to happen. I live in a gated townhome. there are fire alarms on the exterior. You have to get behind the gate. It became frequent that fire alarms would go off in the middle of the night. This would usually happen around 4 a.m. And I remember specifically talking to Maisie about this, and I had kind of an epiphany I didn't even think of before. Never once did a fire alarm go off when I didn't have company over. It was only nights that I had a girlfriend over. It was only nights that a female was in my house that those fire alarms went off. And it happened many, many times. It became really weird talking to my neighbors being like, oh, is this fire alarm broken? But deep down I know. I'm like, I have no proof. But deep down I know what other reason would be causing this. I specifically talked to one of the firemen and they told me which one had been pulled. And it was it's the only one that has street access, which means someone was coming to the building and pulling the alarm. And then another one of the girls that DJs for me that is also one of my good friends, like Maisie. She's always over. She parked on my street one day, and she said that she saw a girl in a large coat standing there that looked like her. She has the worst vision ever, and she couldn't tell me for sure. But then when she described her, I'm like, who else could that be? And she said, yeah, it was weird because she was just standing outside your place across the street, basically with like a clear view of your living room, kind of right where I'm sitting right now. I think one of the weirdest things, I started to receive, I guess what you could say, gifts. I don't really even feel comfortable calling them gifts. It didn't feel like a gift. The one that was really obvious, and I definitely have proof that she did it, was she sent a chainsaw to my house. It was she had ordered it on Amazon and had it shipped to my house. And you know, when you get an Amazon package, they're really ambiguous. You just like, oh, I ordered something, or I tear into it, and I'm like, a chainsaw. And I remember like I said, at this point, I stopped reading all her texts and emails because there were millions of them, and I didn't have enough time in the day, and I would have panic attacks. So I just stopped reading them. Just by pure luck, I had read one of them after I received that, and she said, oh, by the way, did you get the tools that I sent you? I was like, oh my God, she just called a chainsaw a tool? Not to mention, I live in the city. It's the one tool that I do a lot of home improvement and DIY stuff, and I was like, a chainsaw. It's actually the one tool that I could never use. She didn't send me a power drill or anything, but she referred to it as just casually, oh, did you get the tool that I sent you? And I remember at the time, my roommate that was living with me was like, oh, what did you get? And I was like, oh, you know who just casually sent me a chainsaw. And I remember that's even when my roommate something clicked in her, and she even felt generally just unsafe living with me and talked about moving out.
Did that impact like other relationships in your life and other jobs that you were trying to get because of your stalker?
The girl that got the 1-year restraining order that I was dating at the time, I would definitely say that was one of the primary causes of why we broke up. She was and don't get me wrong, she was a trooper during all this, and she was so supportive. But she was, just as I was getting 100 messages a day, she was getting God knows how many messages. Maisie was getting God knows how many messages. When you started to add up the communication, you kind of would stop and be like, how is it even possible for someone to communicate this much in a day physically?
And finally I had to stop working for you.
Yeah, you stopped working for me.
I quit, and I was like, it wasn't personal. I told him like, hey, like, we're still best friends, but like, I have to think of my safety because it was becoming way too much. And there was a point where she showed up at another job that I worked at that was separate of Keith, and was trying to get in. And
Another one of my DJs, she started showing up at the restaurant that she worked at. The girl, like I said, that I was dating, we stopped dating. The more, it's kind of funny because I've never really said this aloud, but yeah, the more I think about it, people were kind of forced to abandon me, just based on the intensity and you know, feeling frightened for their own safety. My roommate ended up not moving out, but it was a thing. One of the other people that worked the door for me, it was just too much for them. They ended up quitting as well. Uh, at this time, she had become physical as well. I mean, she would force herself through the door. She would at least try to. She had gotten physical with my staff. I also kind of knew it was scary because a lot of the guys that work security for me, these are big guys, and at first they thought it was a joke. And as time kind of went on, and they had their own personal incidents with her, I'd never seen big guys that scared. It was kind of, I think one thing that you realize as a man, it's definitely been one of the most helpless feelings I've ever experienced. I try to see kind of the good in everything, and I've talked to Maisie about this, and I think it kind of makes me one of the few men that can relate to the fear that a lot of women feel when men are aggressive. I've never felt anxiety and helplessness like that before, as the kind of the combination. I ended up talking to a gentleman, a friend of mine who is also a police officer, and I remember just saying to him, like, I'm not only scared of being hurt or being attacked or being wounded. There's no actual way, like, how do I defend myself? I can't attack a woman in public. I can't even make a gesture like that. The initial perception of that would be a man hurting a woman. And not only do I not want that, I don't even know how to address that. And I remember coming to him very just kind of helpless and just being like, how do I even defend myself? She's gotten to a point where she's now becoming assertive, aggressive, and potentially hurting me, and I gave him hypotheticals. What if she came at me with a knife? Or what if she did this? And I think even he initially was kind of like, I don't know how you defend yourself. I think from the perspective of a man being attacked, we generally think of it as other men. And so there's kind of this primitive reptilian part of us that's like, just fists up, go to war. This felt so different. And that's when we kind of had talked about it, and I went out and got pepper spray. And I would have to kind of rehearse these things in my mind, and just kind of like, in martial arts, you spar. I was doing kind of this hypothetical mental sparring where I'd be like, what if she attacks you like this? What if there's a crowd? What if there's this? And my natural line of defense, where I wouldn't look like an abusive male, ironically, why I may be getting stabbed, was pepper spray the general area and run like a gazelle. And from a legal standpoint, even having the restraining order and all that stuff, I still felt extremely helpless. And as time went on, the restraining order that gave me kind of this initial zone of comfort started to kind of fade a little bit. And there were several incidents with police officers where she was clearly in violation of the restraining order. We had called the police. They were very responsive, but you could tell that this was such an unusual case, maybe once again because I'm a guy, or I don't really know the logistics, but they weren't much help initially. Police would show up. They would ask me what the problem was. I'd say, here's the person. I have a restraining order. There was one time it became normal for her to not only wait outside the clubs, but it also became normal for her. Ironically, the only time we would be there and I'd say, oh, I don't see her outside. This is a great night. Like, maybe she's given up. And sure enough, we would walk to my car. And my car could be as much as 5 blocks away, parked in sporadic places, and she'd be waiting at the car for us. There were points where she would actually just, she would try to force the door open and get in. And there was one point where that had happened, and I had my restraining order. I had all my ducks in a row. Police showed up, multiple witnesses. We were with about 4 people that time. And the police read the restraining order, and she just walked away. And I remember kind of freaking out and yelling at the police and being like, you need to get her, like, she's leaving. And they were like, just give us a second, we need to go over this. And at the point, the cop was like, oh yeah, everything checks out, definitely she's not allowed to be around you. And I said, yes, this is all the things I know. I have the restraining order. And they just said to me, they said, we'll circle the block and look for her, and just casually drove away. It wasn't until I got a detective involved. When I went to the station, at that point, I presented it no different than I presented it to the court. I said, okay, so here's the point I got the restraining order. Here's all the insane things that have happened since I got the restraining order, which are a clear violation. So you have to start thinking more like a lawyer, and you have to take the emotion out of it. Went to the station with, at the time, the girl I was dating. She was really good about it too. She had done a really good job about contacting the police, and I kind of learned through her that you have to not only stay on it, but you have to kind of pester them a little bit. The police got a hold of a detective. I had gotten a hold of another detective at another station, and then we all started talking. And I just sent them very clean things. I was like, I don't want to waste your time. Here's the restraining order. She's clearly in violation. Since the restraining order, here's the things she said. And by the way, once the restraining order was issued, even an email, doesn't even matter what it says, any point of contact through social media and my restraining order was a violation of the restraining order. So what happened is, once I submitted that proof, they put a warrant for her arrest. So now, this is where the cops were able to be more responsive. I realized the police aren't good at preventative crime. Their job is more to show up when a crime has been committed. And how they kind of see a restraining order almost is, to them, there's no actual crime being committed in a way. What you're basically saying to them is, this person may hurt me, and this paper says that. And it didn't really seem to click with them. And we kept having situation after situation where they'd show up and do nothing. And so once the detectives got involved, we submitted the evidence saying, and by the way, the chainsaw sent to the house didn't help. The eyewitness reports of the fire alarm didn't help. The eyewitness reports, none of that helped. It was I had a couple emails, once again, that she was threatening poison me and or murdering, murder, death, kill. Submitted those. That's when the detectives submitted all that information and then filed a warrant. The great thing about the warrant, and this is what I would tell people now thinking about it, is you need to initially get that restraining order. And the minute that is violated, that's when you really need to kick in gear and make sure the police get all that information, because they do need to file for a warrant. The great thing is, once you get the warrant, the cops don't need to hear from you. The story's irrelevant. All you need to tell them is, this person has a warrant out, and that's all you need to say. You don't even need to mention your personal story or your journey, and they realistically don't care. You just say, that's the person, they have a warrant.
We learned a lot of her backstory through this detective too. And we know that she'd been committed to, for her obvious like mental health issues, she'd been committed during these past 3 years on three separate occasions. Yeah, she had to be committed to a mental institution. And then aside from that, she was already in jail for 2 months at one point.
For domestic violence with her mom?
Yes, for assaulting her mom. And when she was let out, she continued stalking Keith. We got the restraining order, and then that's finally when she got arrested for that and put in jail until this past Christmas for several months.
Even the night that she was arrested, when we had the warrant in place, it was just another normal club night. I think it was Saturday night. Another girl, at this point, Maisie had quit for obvious reasons. Another girl was working the door. She was informed. I actually had made a PDF copy of the warrant and the restraining order, and all of my staff had it saved in their phone as a picture. So we had to get strategic, and I actually called a meeting with all my staff. This was probably about a week prior, and I said, okay, you guys have all this information. The minute you see her, you have to be kind of covert about it because we don't want her to leave. Have it ready on your phone, contact the police. Don't even come get me. It's a waste of time. Contact police, do all that. Once you've done all that, calmly come down and let me know. Also, for my own sanity, the less I know, the better. Contact them. My door girl at the time, she did all these things. Police ended up coming. Luckily, generally, there got to a point where we had called the police so many times. She knew she could be there until the police came. And she knew once the police came, she had a certain window where she could just leave. And that became kind of a normal situation as well, where, that happened at least a dozen times before we actually got the warrant. Once we had that, police were called. Luckily, this time they came in different directions. She didn't see them. She was against the wall talking to a group of people. My door girl quietly showed them the restraining order and the warrant and said, that's the girl. They walked over. They said, we need to see your identification. And my door girl said that she initially said she didn't have identification. And then they said, are you this person? And she said, no, that's not me. And then they said, no, we're going to need to see identification. At that point, she showed identification. And then that's when they arrested her. And I realized the only way she was going to get any mental help was to be arrested. How our system's set up is just it's not set up to help people like this. She didn't need prison time. She needed help. And I really struggled with that. As much as she had tortured my life, there was still a degree of empathy towards her, and I felt sorry for her. And as much as I was miserable about the situation, I didn't want to see her go to jail. It was a weird struggle. It was after I had talked about it with a couple friends and family, that I realized that we had to get her arrested. It was the only way she was going to get any sort of help.
Where is your stalker now?
She is out. She went to jail for most of 2019.
And she's somewhere in Los Angeles.
She did contact me when she got out of jail, which brought the panic never went away. It definitely helped knowing she was somewhere. I would check it. There's a specific website you can check to see if someone's detained, or you don't get a lot of information, but you get enough to know this person is locked up, this person is getting treatment. And it definitely helped knowing those things. But there was a certain point where I remember feeling crazy because even when she was in jail, I didn't feel safe. Um, she had got out around Christmas, around holiday, and the minute she got out, everyone was contacting me, being like, "Just so you know, she's out. Time to panic again." And specifically, the message I got was actually New Year's night. Um, I had received a random. I had been setting up all day for the New Year's event and DJing that night. I had received a random call early in the day, in the evening. It was a number I didn't recognize, and I didn't take it. And I remember New Year's night, I checked my voicemail.
She called you from prison because you came up to me and you were like, I just got a collect call from the LA City jail. And then we looked online, and sure enough, she had just been arrested. And
Right, and that's how we knew. When she was getting out, I didn't know specifically. I had numerous people call me and be like, she's gotten out. None of them had received contact with her, and finally, someone had hit me up that knew her and she had considered a friend, and she had reached out and said she was out. And that's when I knew that she was out. And then shortly after that, I did receive contact with her. I get a text from her, and it says it was her, and just to let me know that my restraining order is no longer valid, and she's allowed to contact me whenever she wants. And that's when I was like, wow, after a year of treatment, confinement, jail, whatever, whatever she had gone through, we were just kind of right back to square one.
So your restraining order is up now?
It's up now. Yes, it was up a couple months ago.
And are you going to try to get another restraining order?
I definitely still feel threatened by her. When I had received that message from her, I had a generic copy and paste message. Like I said, I had written this thing, and anytime she said something to me, if I did respond, it was only the message. It said, "You're clearly in violation of this restraining order. Please reference your restraining order and see that this is a clear violation." It was just like stereo instructions, basically saying you're in violation. I sent that back to her. After that, I didn't hear from her, and then that kind of a month or two passed, and then it kind of brought us up to speed where we are, where the whole COVID thing hit and the lockdown thing hit, and I haven't received a message since. So I don't know where she is and what she's doing, but I don't want to get another restraining order, but at the same time, I feel it's almost stupid not to. I do obviously have enough evidence with just that one message. She is in violation of that. But I haven't heard from her in a couple months, and so I'm just kind of fingers crossed, hoping it stays that way. But obviously that hasn't been the pattern since, 2017. There is that lingering anxiety and fear that I haven't really gotten rid of.
What do you want to happen to your stalker?
ever since I stopped working for Keith, the attention and the heat hasn't been on me so much. So I realized it was really a side effect of her in her delusions. She saw me as an obstacle. And so the heat's kind of off, but I'm always kind of wary of that now. Like, I've never had anything like that happen in my life where that kind of threat has been present, Like, I would like to see her get help. I mean, she's obviously incredibly mentally ill. That was very apparent in my first meeting with her. And just hearing the way she talks and the way she behaves, and it's sad. And I can empathize with people who are mentally ill, but at the same time, you know, I don't know, like, she's been in an institution 3 times, we found out, and they only have like a 72-hour hold, and she's been let out each time and nothing's changed, and she's been to jail twice and she's still contacting Keith. And so I don't know, even if she did get help, if that would affect her behavior or change her for the better. So I don't know. I don't have any answers for how. I think there needs to be a better. There's a mental health crisis for sure in this country, and I think there needs to be better solutions for it and more programs to help deal with that.
How has your life changed from this experience?
Um, I mean, just ever since moving here to LA from Seattle, like, I've been exposed to like a new world of like different personality types and characters, and you definitely have to, be strong and, be street smart and learn how to protect yourself. But this experience definitely made that even more true when I started experiencing like this kind of crazy energy. And like, I mean, I've had like milder cases of this happen to myself, separate of like any of this, with like male attention and stuff. But this was like nothing I've ever experienced before. And so I'm more wary of people now, I don't know. Sometimes I can be jaded, but I just try to be street smart, if that makes sense.
Why do you think it's so different for a man to come forward saying that he has a stalker than a woman?
99% of the time, it's just looked at as a joke. What I experience and I still experience is people don't see it as a real threat. It kind of gotten to a point where I think initially that's where a lot of the anxiety and stress came from, was no one was really listening. Uh, my friends, most of my friends, it was just a source of entertainment. They enjoyed hearing about it. It became the first thing everyone asked me. What's going on with that whole stalker thing? And it was fun and entertaining for them. And initially I understood why it was entertaining. It was a wild story. Like, who doesn't want to hear a story about you know fire alarms and chainsaws and people waiting outside your door for unlimited amounts of time? But I remember the point once I felt that my life was threatened, and then that energy kind of, my personal energy kind of transformed into something that felt more helpless. I'm definitely a little bit of a control freak, and it was a situation that I couldn't control, and it did kind of bulldoze my life, and still to this day does. It's something I'm still talking about in therapy. It's something I'm still getting uh, help about. I know it's a more rare occurrence that it's happened to me as a guy. Um, the one biggest thing people mention is they can't fathom that I didn't have a physical romantic relationship with her. They can't correlate the stalking with the lack of connection. They're just, the first thing out of people's mouths every time is, so did you can tell me, did you date this girl? Did you take this girl serious? Like, did you have sex with this girl? Like, you can tell me. And I'm like, no, there's been no romantic contact. Like, it's, so not only are you threatened and frustrated and feel helpless, now you're having to plead your case to everybody. Every person's like, I just don't believe it. And I think there's a bit of insanity and frustration in that as well. One time where I remember the police officer was like reading the restraining order.
Yeah, and he couldn't believe it because you were a guy.
Yeah, he pulled me aside and was like, "This is crazy." And then he even asked me, he's like, "Do you used to date this girl or what's going on?" And I remember
Yeah.
at that time I was so frustrated. I was just like, "That's irrelevant." But he just couldn't believe it. And even a police officer that I had never met in my life immediately started kind of, I hate to say, but like kind of broing down with me, if you will. And he was like, "What'd you do to this girl?" And that was that is one thing I will mention from a male perspective, is there were a lot of people that were kind of like, "What did you do to this girl?" I'm not one of a kind in this situation. There's other people like me, but it's unique enough where people really have trouble grasping it and really relating to it.
What advice you have about coming forward as a guy being stalked versus advice about coming forward as a female being stalked?
Like you guys, I think you guys kind of pointed on that. People are less likely to tell their story. Like it's like in some way it's emasculating or something. Um, it's really weird because people talk about it in extremes. On like one level, they feel it's emasculating, but on another level, they feel it's flattery. It's like I remember a lot of people would say that, "Oh man, you must be some kind of charmer to get a girl this crazy about you." Um, and so they always talk about it in such extremes. Uh, I can definitely say, like, coming on your guys' show and talking about it more has helped me to a degree. So I think it's a lot. It's like a lot of things in mental health. Just talk about it, be open about it. It's not about it, it's not about you. It doesn't devalue you in any way. Um, it, like I kind of say, it all started that night where we were at that diner, and I was passionately talking about my interest in what I do, and the projects I'm involved in, and the things that I love that I was working on. And I think that was kind of the trigger that made this girl kind of click and say, in a very unhealthy way, but like, I want to pursue this guy. I don't think there's any negative on a level of it being personal. Um, I don't really think it says anything negative about that individual. And so I feel like they should have no issue coming forward. It's no different than if someone felt guilty about being in a car accident that wasn't their fault. It's a byproduct of a situation you didn't create. And so I think that I would hope that men can look at it from that perspective. And this show's been therapeutic to a degree about talking about it. What I would hope is that my hope for people that it happens to, and I hope it doesn't happen to anyone, but that their friends take it more seriously initially and help them get that proof and evidence to help protect that person. I would say that's something that I was lucky to, at the time, the girl I was dating in Maisie, I was lucky to have really great allies and friends that without them, I wouldn't have had a lot of the proof and evidence.
Yeah, I would say from a female perspective, um, I get looking from the outside in, from like other people's perspective, like this kind of, I have like a fascination with true crime and have for a while, but this is like, stalking is one of those crimes that just seems like something you see in the movies, and then when it actually happens to you, you're like, oh my God. And I remember one coworker we had even like asked me like, so she's stalking Keith. How did you get involved in this? There must be a lot of drama, like you guys fighting over a guy. And I'm like, no, not at all. Like, I can't believe you would assume that. I'm not dating Keith. I don't have this romantic affiliation with him. And aside from that, this woman's just mentally ill, and what she's doing is a crime. It's very serious. She could hurt either one of us. And it's crazy that our peers, I'm not all of them, but some of them don't take it this seriously. And the law enforcement, it's been such a hassle to get them to take it seriously. And I've read enough stories that I know how these situations end. And I hope there in the future is a better way for law enforcement to deal with these kinds of things for everyone, women and men alike. And more people come forward with their stories, and just know that if you want to get your restraining order or get law enforcement involved, you have to collect evidence and you have to be on it, because if you're not, something serious could happen.
I think also too, from the male perspective, I think one thing maybe men would struggle with is maybe that's the first time in their life where they've ever felt physically threatened or helpless. And that was a real unique feeling. It was definitely a unique feeling on a level of I've I've been in fights as a child. I've been beat up as a kid. I've had interactions with men as an adult that were, men facing off. I've had all those. It's a very different feeling. It has so much more, like I said, anxiety and helplessness, and maybe a lot of men maybe have experienced that but didn't come forward because that's just something that they are extremely frightened of.
You could each just give one main piece of advice on how to deal with it.
Definitely don't be silent about it. When something's telling you that someone's behavior towards you isn't normal or healthy, don't just write it off. Trust your instincts and take it seriously. Trust your instincts, and just be careful of what you say, but do collect evidence and stuff, because it's going to come in handy later on.
I would agree with that. It just acknowledge it's not going away on its own.
No, you have to actively do something about it. Yeah.
There was definitely a certain point in my situation where, when I look at my timeline, when I reflect on it, if I could not necessarily do things different, but if it, let's say it happened again, or it happened with this person, from the time that she became a threat and things definitely took a turn, I mean, I tortured myself for over a year before I even acted on it. I ruined my life for a year because of these things. And if there's one piece of advice is make sure everyone around you is aware of the situation. Don't take it lightly. If as a person when things have taken that turn, and when they take that turn to that unhealthy level, and you're in that situation, you got to become strategic. You've got to get that evidence. You've got to get prepared. No one wants to spend time and money, and I think this is where I always say, plan for the worst, but hope for the best. And I think in this situation, I definitely, whether it was because of my situation was unique, being a man, I had never experienced this. I wasn't, whatever reason, I'm not really sure at this point, but I definitely dragged my feet. And if it wasn't for Maisie being a part of it, and the other girl at the time I was dating, and friends and family, there was a point where everyone was like, this is hilarious. And they turned quicker than I did. Even though I had all the torture and the anxiety, I was being very passive about it. I didn't want to deal with it. And there was a point where people were pushing me, and I think where I would definitely change things and give advice to people is just be proactive early.
Yeah, definitely do your research and stuff too on these types of crimes and cases and stuff.
Keith and Maisie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. If anyone out there is in need of help or is a victim of stalking, please reach out. You can find a list of resources on our Instagram at Strictly Stalking Pod.
You can watch all of our episodes at youtube.com/Strictly Stalking Pod. I'm Jake DEPTULA.
And I'm Jamie Beebe. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Strictly Stalking.